WTVO, Channel 17, Rockford.
Milton Berle, Sid Caesar, and Danny Thomas. Three of comedy's longest-running kings together again next Donahue.
Donahue, Wednesday at 4 p.m. here on WTVO.
Northwest Illinois' special place for special kids, Children's Development Center. CDC offers programs that focus on the physical, mental, and emotional growth of children and emotional support for their parents. CDC is grateful for the support it has received from the community.
The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson and Late Night with David Letterman will be seen 15 minutes later than usual, so that we may bring you the following NBC News special. NBC News Decision 88 coverage continues. Tonight's special report, South Dakota and Minnesota. Here is Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. In his drive for the Republican presidential nomination, Senator Bob Dole of Kansas tonight was attempting to jumpstart his campaign in the cold of the upper Midwest, and apparently he has succeeded. NBC News projects that he has won the South Dakota primary and the Minnesota caucuses. In Minnesota on the Republican side as well, Pat Robertson, the second-place finisher, and he could, before the night is out, beat Vice President George Bush in South Dakota. On the Democratic side, in the Democratic six-pack, well, Dukakis and Gephardt split a pair tonight. Gephardt winning South Dakota, Dukakis winning Minnesota. Our projected winner now in the state of Minnesota, with about a third of the vote counted in that caucus state. Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis, our projected winner, followed by Illinois Senator Paul Simon and the Reverend Jesse Jackson, with about 18% of the vote. Richard Gephardt, who concentrated on South Dakota, well back in that field. Al Gore of Tennessee, Gary Hart, and Bruce Babbitt, of course, who has dropped out. On the Republican side in Minnesota, again, our projected winner, Senator Bob Dole, about 60% of the vote has been counted. In that caucus state where there's traditionally a very low turnout, Pat Robertson, our projected runner-up in Minnesota. Jack Kemp finishes only third there. He had hoped to do better. It'll be hard for him to raise money, even harder now, and there's some question about how far he can go in this campaign. Vice President George Bush pretty well pulled out of Minnesota, and that's reflected in his vote totals. The rest of the field, they're out of there. DuPont and Haig, they've dropped out of the race. So that's how it looks in Minnesota tonight. Next door in South Dakota, where they have a primary, the vote there, beginning, first of all, with the Democrats. Virtually all of the vote has been counted. Richard Gephardt spent about $60,000 on television and radio in South Dakota, and that amount of money will go to a long way in that sparsely populated state. He also took the same message to South Dakota that brought him victory in Iowa. Mike Dukakis, the Massachusetts governor, runner-up in South Dakota. Al Gore did make an effort there, but not much of a vote, only about 9%. Gary Hart won 4 years ago. This time they rejected him out of hand. Senator Paul Simon way back in the field. The Reverend Jesse Jackson with just over 3,300 votes in South Dakota. And once again, Bruce Babbitt has, of course, dropped out of all of this. Among Republicans in South Dakota, Bob Dole, our projected winner, Pat Robertson and George Bush in a very tight race for second place there. As you can see, less than 1,000 votes separate them. And then Jack Kemp, now in South Dakota, in fourth place. Pete DuPont has dropped out of the Republican race for President of the United States. Pat Robertson did well in South Dakota, even though he didn't campaign there a lot. The 700 Club, his old religious program, listed 70,000 donors from South Dakota alone. That in a state with about 480,000 registered voters altogether. I'll be back with more after this.
What do you think of the Ford Festiva? It's big.
Small.
Nah, it's big. Sort of a big smallness.
Festiva gives you features like a roomy interior, 660 powertrain warranty, sometimes even your own parking space. So it's big and small.
How about Festiva's price? It's small. It's nothing. Smallness.
Ford Festiva. Call it big, call it small. Call it yours for only $54.90.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
Right now, the store is just one big disaster area. The new phone system I got, no one can work it out. All my lines are on hold. The customers can't get through. I'm losing delivery orders hand over fist. But things gotta go.
Missouri Congressman Richard Gephardt wasted no time tonight after winning in South Dakota. He headed south immediately for Super Tuesday on March 8th. He's with us now from Waco, Texas. Congressman, congratulations, first of all. You pair that victory in South Dakota with your victory next door in Iowa. It is essentially the same message about trade and the farm vote. You're from that part of the country. And more than a quarter of the South Dakota voters that we talked to today that voted for you said that they believed that Michael Dukakis eventually would win the Democratic nomination. Don't you find that discouraging?
Not at all, because you'll have to remember that we got a good result in New Hampshire last week. And I think that that means I'm the candidate in this race on the Democratic side that can take a message all over the country on jobs and wages and economic performance that'll make sense all over the country. And I think that's what the results tonight and last week prove.
You've had a good deal of success so far in this campaign in Iowa, New Hampshire, and also in South Dakota with very effective television commercials talking about the cost of a Hyundai in this country. Now you're down south. You've got 20 states to deal with. You'll have to have millions of dollars, and the reliable reports are that your campaign, if not yet broke, is very close to it.
Well, that's not true, Tom. We've done well in the last couple of weeks. We're raising money at a rapid rate. We're going to have our television on throughout the South. And again, the issue in the South, as it is all over the country, is jobs and wages. How do we hold our standard of living in a very competitive world marketplace? And trade and energy and agriculture are the issues there as they are all over the country. So I think we're going to get a good result in the South.
Thank you very much, Missouri Congressman Richard Gephardt, tonight in Waco, Texas, after his victory in South Dakota. And here in New York tonight, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis, who spent a lot of time in South Dakota, finished second there, our projected winner tonight in Minnesota. So far, Governor, with the exception of these Minnesota caucuses, which represent really a low voter turnout in a very liberal state, there seems to be a real regional bias. Gephardt doing very well in the Midwest, you doing well in New England. What happens when you go down south? Do we have to start talking about Al Gore as the primary favorite there?
Well, Tom, to begin with, I won in Minnesota, or at least I think I've won in Minnesota, and I'm the first candidate from outside his region to win and win decisively. So I think that's good news, and I'm pleased with a strong second in South Dakota, and it looks as if Congressman Gephardt and I will be dividing those delegates as well. So this is a good night for us. I look forward to campaigning in the South. The economic future of this country, jobs and economic opportunity are the issues all across this country, and especially in regions like the Midwest and the South, and I'm looking forward to campaigning there. But this has been a good evening for us, and I'm very pleased.
In fact, we have projected you the winner in Minnesota, Governor Dukakis. Gephardt does very well when he goes into those states and concentrates on the trade protection bill. He could likely find a receptive audience in the South, don't you agree?
Well, I don't think you can pick and choose, Tom, as to what states you're going into and what states you aren't going into. I think I'm the one Democratic candidate that's contesting and competing in every state. And I think that's what you have to do if you're serious about being a national candidate and winning this nomination and winning the presidency. So I'm going to be taking the message of a strong economic future for this country, one where we outcompete, outsell, outmanufacture, outhustle every other nation in the world. I think we can be the best America, and that's what I stand for, and that's what people in the South stand for. And I'm looking forward to heading down there tomorrow and going to work.
Okay, thank you very much, Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis. We'll see you a couple of weeks from tonight on Super Tuesday, of course. Before we get to Super Tuesday, however, we want to show you how the delegates are stacking up at this hour, at this time, in the long race for the presidential nomination. Democratic delegates tonight. 36 of them, as you can see. Mike Dukakis, Paul Simon, 17, Jesse Jackson, 14, and the others, none. Republican delegates. 22 for Bush, 18 for Dole, 14 for Robertson, and 2 for the others. We'll be back right after this.
Get a taste of the unexpected. There's
Raisin in the middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
Raisin in the middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
What a taste sensation. Whole wheat, sweetened with raisin.
A combination with flair. A tasty little package
With raisin in there.
Raisin in the middle.
Naturally sweet raisin.
Raisin in the middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
Raisin in the middle.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares.
And now apple cinnamon squares. Behind the brilliant performance of the athletes, there is another brilliant Olympic performance you don't see. The processing of the millions of documents that make the Olympics happen. Documents created, printed, copied, and distributed, electronically and on paper. Xerox is proud to be a key player on this unseen but most vital Olympic team. Team Xerox, a world leader in document processing.
We document the world.
We just showed you how many delegates the candidates won tonight in South Dakota and Minnesota. How do they stack up to date, to the season so far, before they get to New Orleans for the Republicans and Atlanta for the Democrats? Democratic delegates first tonight: Dukakis, Simon, Gephardt, Jackson, and Gore, in that order. Those are the delegates that they have won so far. Those include the so-called superdelegates. Those are party officials and elected officials. Among the Republicans now, 1,139 needed to win the nomination. George Bush out in front of Bob Dole by just one delegate count. Jack Kemp has 24 delegates. Some of those are superdelegates. Pat Robertson, despite his impressive showing at the poll and in the caucuses, only 8 delegates. There's still a long way to go. NBC's chief political correspondent Ken Bodie is with us tonight at station KARE-TV in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Ken, based on what we have seen so far, there's a kind of a regional bias. Dole and Gephardt do well in the Middle West. Bush and Dukakis do well in New England.
It's like that old rule in real estate, Tom. What matters is location, location, location. You know, Michael Dukakis said he got a good win in Minnesota, and he did get a good win in Minnesota tonight, no doubt about it. But people are going to notice that this is the state of Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey, Eugene McCarthy, all liberals. Minnesota is a liberal, Democratic, farmer-labor party. And I fear that Michael Dukakis' win here is going to be sort of like sweet corn. It won't travel too well.
All right, Ken. Bob Dole won impressively in South Dakota and Minnesota tonight. We talked to a lot of voters today. As you look at their responses, were there any weaknesses in the Dole showing today?
Dole's win was very big, so big, in fact, that he won the born-agains, and Robertson only came in second with those in South Dakota. But one area where he does appear to be weak is with that very conservative segment of the Republican Party, the self-identified conservatives, 20% of them in South Dakota. He lost them. He also lost the very conservative Republicans in New Hampshire last week. He came in 5th. Now we're heading south to Super Tuesday, where conservative Republicans are in a larger number than they are in South Dakota or New Hampshire. That could be a problem for Dole.
And Richard Gephardt continues to do well among conservative Democrats and older Democrats. Conceivably, that could serve him well when he goes head-to-head against Al Gore down south, with Mike Dukakis also in that chase.
It could, Tom, and there's one other thing that could help Gephardt, and that is that in South Dakota tonight, voters told our pollsters that they liked his trade amendment 5-1, thought it would help the American economy. Now, last week in New Hampshire, it was only an even 50-50 split in terms of voter opinion on the trade amendment. If Gephardt can sell that trade amendment and make it an issue in the South, he could do well down there with that.
And Vice President George Bush got hurt a little bit tonight. Ken, wouldn't you agree?
George Bush not only got hurt, Tom, but I think he magnified his own losses by cutting out of these 2 states before the voters were able to go to the polls. It doesn't look good. The front runner, the old rule is, and even his campaign managers used to say it, the front runner has to run everywhere. George Bush is not running everywhere, and he, like Bob Dole last week, through his petulousness, probably magnified his own losses.
Thank you very much, Ken Bodie, Minneapolis, St. Paul tonight. We've got a long way to go. The big one comes up 2 weeks from tonight. That's Tuesday, March 8th. It's Super Tuesday, of course. We begin a week from this Saturday in South Carolina. NBC News will have complete coverage of all of those returns. We'll have complete returns from Minnesota and South Dakota beginning tomorrow with NBC News at sunrise. I'll see you tomorrow night on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Tom Brokaw, NBC News, New York.
This has been an NBC News special report.
I'm Bryant Gumbel. Tomorrow morning on Today, the latest on the races for the nomination.
I'm Jane Pauley, also Anthony Andrews and Harrison Ford.
Join us tomorrow morning on Today.
Tomorrow, how's the Catholic Church dealing with a very troubling problem? Priests who become child molesters. I'm Tom Brokaw. The story on NBC Nightly News.
I started work right after I got my degree. Eventually, I put everything on hold and started a family. Ask my daughter what I do, and she'll say, Mom makes orange juice. That's not so easy. This is 100% pure juice. We don't add sugar. We don't add preservatives. We don't add anything. And that's what being select is. It's not just some name on a box. I wouldn't let it be.
Kathy Brown makes Citrusil Select for your family and for hers.
Pete, ship 20 pounds of smoked Polish sausage to Stan Lenski in Warsaw. Stretch, 30 pounds of Swiss wurst to Zurich. Rush, the smoked Italia to Rome.
Got it.
We get requests from all over for our plump, delicious smoked sausages. But you don't have to go through all that trouble because Johnsonville smoked sausages are in your favorite food store. Try some. You'll love them.
And send all their smoked bratwurst to Frankfurt for my grandma. They can't get the good stuff over there.